Oh, welcome to another live stream. We're going to talk about gang stalking. We're going to talk about the tyranny of gang stalking, and hopefully, you guys can hear me. I'm trying something new, and it looks like anybody's out there, so I'm waiting for someone to show up. Hopefully, I did this correctly, and I'm wondering if I did. We've been on for 30 seconds, and nothing. I'm pretty sure it was public, and I'm pretty sure it's to YouTube. Okay, we've got one person out there. How about you throw me a comment so I can see if I got this correct? I'm trying a different format here. Throw me a comment. Throw me some love. I think I got it set up right. Okay. Got two people out there. No comments. Am I doing this? I can't see any comments. Not that I need to. I can barely get to the comments when you guys start throwing them out there anyway. I'm not seeing any. I'm going to try and hit the comment thing again. Not getting any comments. I wonder why. Well, that's not good. Whatever. I'll I guess I'll just let it go for now. But anyway, most of the people have been watching these after the live, but I do like to interact. We've got three people. It could be that I'm just unaware of how to use this. And I wonder if I can switch over the format because I'm not seeing anything here. Unless no one's making comments yet, I would imagine Angels Don't Fall is out there. And he usually makes comments. So let's see. Well, I'm not seeing any comments. Okay, whatever. I'm not trying to be boring or repeat myself. I'm trying a different format here. I'm trying the desktop on my Android, and it's weird. So hopefully this is going to work. If not, whatever. I can always switch back over and go and do it again because we've only got three people out there, and who knows? It's probably perps anyway. Of course, I've mentioned that before that a lot of times you will have people showing up just for the freak show. And I don't know if this is even working. This is getting frustrating. We've got 6 people out there and no comments, really? Somebody put a comment on there for me because this isn't working either. Okay. Well, we may have to end this stream and do it again because, no, we've got Sons of Thunder out there. Okay, we're good. Matrix decoded. Spiritual love. Is that what that says? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, well, it's working. That's okay. And let me get my little, yeah, it's working, dude. Just give us some information. Matrix decoded says. So I appreciate that, guys. Not a perp. Sitting away on my own, looking for a new land to live. Okay, well, that's spiritual love too. Okay, well, I'm glad everybody has showed up. I was wondering, was this the new format? And one of these days I'm going to actually get sophisticated and I'm going to throw in sound bites and everything. Believe it or not, because at that point in time, I have a feeling the channel is going to take off. But I want to have the free time. I want to do all that stuff because I've got a lot of old sound bites, and a lot of you may not even know that. If you go back in the videos, maybe a year or two ago, there's some pretty entertaining little sound bites in there, and of course, with a live broadcast, it would be entertaining. But I think the amount of time that you can put a soundbite in is 30 to 60 seconds, which probably wouldn't fit anyway. But whatever. So we're just going to let people show up here. Jose. All right, man. Good to see you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like a freak show yet. Hopefully, I won't turn into one, but you never know. Yeah, that's a lot of the, I don't know, the service that targeted individuals provide online. It seems like because everybody thinks we're crazy. And speaking of that, the tyranny of gangstalking involves that stigma that goes along with the targeted individual. They are accused of being paranoid. They are accused of being on drugs. They are accused of being losers. They're accused of being mentally ill, of being schizophrenic, of being a person of interest. And, within the targeted individual community, people are accused of being perps. Okay, that's just a game. I was watching a video earlier today where a guy was afraid to scratch his face on his live because evidently it triggers somebody. Oh, look, he's scratching his face. He's one of the perps. He's got on a specific colored shirt. I mean, you get really no. I don't think any targeted individual out there is that irrational. Okay, but what does that do? That makes us all look crazy. I've talked about that before. A lot of the people out there that make videos and talk about this stuff are fake. They're not real targeted individuals. They're shills, and they're out there just to bastardize our credibility, basically. Okay, and some of the things that I've talked about as far as disinformation can be examples of propositional tyranny, and I understand that. I understand people dealing with the sequelae of trauma-based mind control, but something like that, I don't know. That's a troll. That's a perp, and hopefully, Mr. Beachwalker and I think there's another moderator that shows up. But let's see. Let me go back into the comments here. No, not yet. Nicholas Boserman is the other moderator. He hasn't shown up yet. Okay. Sons of Thunder says, getting hit hard this month. Lots of games. They love games. Yes, they do. Yeah. Yeah. And Spiritual Love says that the perps are always peeping. No worries. They like to watch, don't they? I've wondered that before too. You got to wonder what these people are getting out of this stuff. That's a matter of speculation. It's also a matter of what the targeted individual is dealing with, and sometimes it just seems like that. And I've talked about that before. That they will move the target into a place where they start processing information differently, and in the process they move them into self-scrutiny. But the way they do that is to get them to believe that everything is about them. Wherever they go, they get attacked. And that's the way it is at first for targeted individuals. They experience that type of tyranny, whether they're going to the convenience store, going to the grocery store, going to the bank, going to the dentist office, going to the doctor's office, driving in traffic, walking out to the mailbox, minding their own business in their apartment or their dwelling, and they're getting attacked. People might be walking up, having a very loud, inconvenient conversation right outside your window, depending on where you live. And of course, it's always going to involve something that has to do with the target. Directed conversations are a great way to attack targeted individuals. And of course, it's surrounded by a huge amount of plausible deniability. And then the target starts to process information differently, and they're looking for it. And then they move into that place where they believe that they're being watched all the time. Their mind is being read. Everybody knows. Everybody is watching them. They're on the Truman Show. They're in the Matrix. They are in the twilight zone of targeted tyranny. And it's really how it's done. And then you get into the other stuff that I've talked about before, where you are attacking people in mass gaslighting campaigns like the Mandela effect. I've talked about that before, where there's literally a collusion. It's literally a plan to mess with the minds of people en masse. But of course, the trick of sensitizing targeted individuals is to get them into a place where they think it's just about them, right? The people in the newscast, they can see through the TV. The TV people are talking to me. The TV people are watching me. The people on the radio, They know. They've got a camera in my house, controlled programming, mass gaslighting, and of course, the directed conversations and the themes that go along with these things are amalgamated into the attack methodology that targeted individuals deal with. And then, of course, the new targets, they don't know about any of this stuff. Of course, it affects everybody the same way. And it's really freaky, when it happens to you, if you're a target that's experienced the higher forms of harassment. And that's really isolated to them. Because I know there's a lot of targets out there. You might be dealing with surveillance, or maybe just workplace harassment, or maybe people might be, throwing the street theater on you every now and again. It's not that heavy. It's not the full meal deal. And you're like, that sounds kind of nuts. I've run into that as well. And we have to learn to get along. We have to learn to be sympathetic for whatever it is that other targeted individuals are dealing with. And some people are dealing with V2K. Some people are dealing with the demonic stuff. Some people are dealing with the directed energy weapons. Others are not. And when someone is honest and they're reaching out for help, or they're giving their testimony and they're talking about hearing voices and stuff like that, well, you can't just jump to the conclusion that they are suffering from mental illness or experiencing the sequelae of schizophrenia, because this stuff happens to people. But getting back to the point, the tyranny involves a mass attack. It's like a mechanism. So if you've experienced the controlled programming or whatever, it's not just the paranoia, okay? And I've tried to illustrate that. I've tried to go into the logistics of that stuff before. And what happens to targets who are dealing with higher forms of harassment, they are thrown into a mechanism, and when you start to react, it's like being caught in quicksand, okay? You start moving, you try to run, you try to get help, you try to explain these things, and you just get sucked deeper in to the mechanism, the meat grinder. You get your leg caught, pretty soon you're up to your hip, and then you're getting slapped into a box with a label and put up on a shelf somewhere. And it happens to a lot of targets. I've talked about that. Making it through the first 2 to 5 years is difficult. You can do that. Things are going to change for you. It has to. Okay, a lot of targets will deal with a change in their harassment. People talk about it all the time. But when you're dealing with the mechanism that I illustrated earlier, it's interesting in the sense that it's all theme-based. For example, I will get accused by people maybe in the channel or in the comments or whatever, and they'll say, how do you know what I'm dealing with? De facto. How do you know the things that are going on in my situation? Because I know the things that are going on in all the targeted individual situation, because it's theme-based, okay? And I've mentioned that several times in videos, that it's, you see somebody who's paranoid, you see somebody who's reacting to certain things, and if you're a targeted individual who's been doing this for a long time, you'll be able to see the greenhorn. Okay, you'll be able to see the new person who's being attacked by this stuff, and you're like, oh, it looks like we got a live one over there. It looks like we've got some fresh fish. Okay, and anything, you got to be real careful around those people too. And I've noticed that when they come in, they don't understand the mechanism. They do not understand their surroundings. They don't understand the gears behind this whole thing, right? And they will accuse you. There's the trolls, there's the perps and everything. And of course, everything makes you a perp. Everybody's going to accuse you or whatever. But then there's the newbie, and they don't understand that it's a mechanism. They do not understand how this works and how people can be incorporated through social dynamics, and how not everybody that seems to be attacking you is really in a conscious collusion. Okay, a lot of these things have reciprocity, and it's not to eliminate the responsibility or culpability for people, and it's not to say that you're not being intentionally attacked. Of course you are. But of course, when that mechanism starts to turn and churn and grind, well, then a lot of things can get out of balance. And it has that type of reciprocity. It does. And it's not just targets reading into things either. But that's how I would know. That's how I know. Because I know that all targets are dealing with surveillance. I know that they're dealing with directed conversations. I know that they're dealing with innuendos, and I know the themes. Like it's like the disinformation campaign that targets deal with, the manufactured justification that goes along with group harassment. It happens to everyone. Well, I don't know. There's a rumor out there. I can't believe all these people that used to be my friend believe this stuff. Well, were they your friends? Really? Are you sure? You know, don't get upset. Don't play into the strategy. But that's how it works. They're all dealing with it. People are accused of being deviants. They're accused of being drug dealers. They're accused of being narcs or whatever. In the targeted individual community, they're accused of being government CIA handlers and whatever. Okay. But that goes along with it. Even if you just mention the wrong word around someone who's been sensitized, they perk up because it's theme-based. This is a mechanized system, and it's even beyond that. And especially when you get into the deeper stuff that people are just like, you don't get it, man. You don't understand what I'm dealing with. You don't know the things that are happening to me. It's beyond. It's even worse than the Twilight Zone. You don't get it. Well, I get it. I understand. And if you're out there, I sympathize with you. Even if you're not involved in the live stream here, if you're watching this later, I pray for people on the channel daily, multiple times a day, because I know how it is. And I'd like to throw that out there again, that if you're dealing with this stuff, the opportunity is there for you to reach out to God, to get help, to realize the malevolent evil that surrounds you. It's pretty much in your face now. Okay, there's no getting out of it. Gangstalking has a spiritual foundation, and it is obviously illegal. It is obviously reckless, and it is obviously demonic. I don't care whether you're dealing with the government stuff, the program, the extended MK Ultra, whatever. You're still dealing with spiritual wickedness. Okay, and you need God's help. And of course, the benefit of that is, of course, everybody needs to wake up to that anyway. And even if it takes gang stalking, well, it's worth it. And I've mentioned that before. When it comes to the perps, when it comes to people out there that seem to be floating through life, they don't have any problems. There's the lateral comparisons that drive targets nuts, that feeds into the menagerie that the world has no justice, that it's just not fair, that there isn't a God. How can there be? Look at what's happening. How's that working out for you? Well, it's a test, and people are being tested, and this is, it's your chance to live by faith. Okay. But after this whole thing is over, the individuals out there who had it easy, well, they're not going to grow. They're not going to know anything. It's going to be a rude awakening. The people out there that are involved in this stuff, it's going to be real bad. Yeah, it is. And they need to repent. Maybe they will. But in the meantime, like I said, my heart goes out to you if you're just getting involved in this. I'm going to go into the comments and see what's going on. Jose says, I was accused of molesting my very own daughter. Oh my gosh. The most sacred thing, and it was devastating. No charges or anything. Oh, just rumors. But man, it was painful. That's a good example. That's a classic example. In fact, Jose, that's part and parcel of the things that targets deal with, because a hostile environment is created around the target. I've talked about the fact that targeted individuals are isolated. They have to be. Okay, no sympathy for the targeted individual, and what better of a theme to use than something like that to accuse the target? And of course, as Jose mentioned, there's no charges. There's no evidence of any of these things happening, but they latch onto it. And as I've mentioned several times, a lot of people need someone to hate. They are looking for someone to persecute, to vent on, to puke their dissatisfaction on. And well, the targeted individual is a very convenient target, and the social dynamics take off. And my heart goes out to you on that one, Jose. But it's classic. I've heard that over and over and over and over, and they have to make sure that targeted individuals get no sympathy. Okay, it's you've seen that theme in Hollywood before. The fugitive is on the loose, but they've got a lot of friends. They've got a social network. Nobody can hunt them down. Nobody can catch them. People are willing to help them. So what do? They put something on the news about the guy, raping an old woman, or molesting a child, or doing something heinous. And the whole idea is to isolate them, to destroy the system of resources, to eliminate sympathy around them. And that's really all that was, Jose. But it's something that all targets will deal with. Let's take a look at some more comments. Harassed and isolated Sons of Thunder. Yeah. Let's see here. Up in Alberta, Canada, huh? Okay. Wow. So that's interesting. Because it seems, well, it used to. I haven't been up in Canada for a long time. But the last time I was up there, it seemed, we used to go up there a lot when I was a kid. We'd go up there a lot. Of course, your money goes a little further. And it's just interesting. And back in the day when I would go up to Canada, people were very polite. I don't know what it's like up there. It's been a long time. Let me see. How long has it been? Over 40 years probably since I've been up to Canada. Yeah, showing my age here. Or maybe around that area, somewhere in there. But people, around, in the United States, even when you get into the mass shootings and stuff like that, they just don't have that stuff up there, right? It's different. People say, well, it's because they've got health care. It's because they got, I don't know what it is. It's almost like a spiritual atmosphere that was different about that. But you'd go up there and people wouldn't honk at you in traffic. They were very polite. They would open the door for you, at least back then. I don't know what it's like now. And I always thought about that. I thought, well, maybe it'd be better to go up to Canada. Maybe at least the gang stalkers would be a little more polite. I talked to a guy up in Montreal for a while, and he said he was getting gang stalked. And then some of the things that he dealt with seemed a little more civilized, at least, maybe, than the stuff that I hear about in the United States. And you do have different geographical regions that have different territorial spirits, shadim or shadus, involved in that. When you get into, for example, when the nations were handed over to the sons of God, according to their number, those were territorial spirits. And so when David was being chased around by Saul, for example, he said, they chased me out of my inheritance and tell me to go sacrifice to another God. And what he was talking about is the geographical territory, the cosmic geography involved in that. There are different territorial spirits, or Daniel, for example, in Babylon, right? Gabriel couldn't get to him, and Michael the archangel had to come and help out, and so on and so forth, because there are differences. There are territorial spirits. But the guy up in Montreal, he said that people would break in to his house. They wouldn't do anything really bad, though. He wasn't worried about anybody putting anything in his food or anything like that, but they would cut these tiny little holes in his new clothing, right? These little things like that, or they would mess with him. They would mimic and mirror him, and so on and so forth, or take his parking spot, or decide to turn on the leaf blower for 4 hours on his day off, or whatever. But I don't know. I'm gonna take your word for it, Sons of Thunder, and I'm gonna have to try and go through the comments again. This format is a little different, so it might take me a minute to find. But I always wondered that. Like I said, it's been a while since I've been up there, and. Okay, well, I must have skipped that one. Okay. Well, I was looking for a reply. Times are changing here in Canada. People my age are polite. The young ones are having the entitled attitude. Okay. So it's the other generations that are being incorporated in the hostile type of attitudes, the entitlement. That's always interesting. everybody is very entitled in the United States. And of course, I've talked about that before in Demonic Hive 1 and 2, how there was an infiltration, not only into Hollywood, but into the colleges. And a lot of people now are just like, it's a waste of money. It depends on what you're going to do. If you get a scholarship or whatever, you're going to be a doctor or something else that actually is attainable for an individual, depending on their skills, where they can actually have a professional job that has, hands-on training, that when you get out in the workforce, you can make money. But a lot of that stuff is worthless. And, people are now going into community colleges, and rightfully so, to learn trades that are very lucrative, comparatively speaking, to, even master's degrees and other areas and so on and so forth, to get out there and get the hands-on experience. People are having a lot more luck in that area, and they're not going into debt. They're not doing it. They're not wasting their time. They're getting out into the workforce and they're making money. But they infiltrated the schools with Marxist professors and the whole thing. 501c3 nonprofit. The price to go to college is ridiculous, right? And then on top of it, you have the indoctrination and all that Marxist theology that's out there, and it just tore the crap out of our nation, getting rid of the patriarchal family, destroying the foundations of a healthy upbringing, and encouraging young women to have children out of wedlock. And of course, then it's just exponential after that. But you can see, like in the strategy of MK Ultra, to use drugs, hallucinogenics, and so on and so forth, and trauma-based mind control to split the personality, or to cause derealization or disassociation in the people that they were experimenting on. Well, there were people in society that were inundated with LSD at that point, right around the same time. It was all back in the 60s, and it's not by accident. So yes, we do have generations of people that are pretty messed up. No question on that. Okay, let's see what's going on out there. Spiritual love too. I was also accused by my mother of my alleged attacker. She had been turned down by me. She was 12. Let me see that. What is that? She had been turned down by me because she was 12 years younger. She allegedly attacked me. Huh. Okay. Well, I think that might have been a conversation, and I thought that was for me. I apologize. We'll go into another comment here. Something that I missed in a prior comment. Okay, I see what's going on. You're having a convo. Sorry about that. There's nothing wrong with the dialogue. Okay, Jose says, yes, my claws also had small cuts that were not normal. Yeah, an abnormal wear and tear. I've dealt with that before. It's kind of funny. But somebody was getting a hold of my underwear. I just bought a bunch of new underwear one time. And it's one thing to have a little tear or something like that, but you're talking about brand new underwear, and you're talking about like 7 pair or whatever it was, just the crotch completely ripped out. I mean, I get home, gone, just gone, man. I mean, they look normal until you put them on, and boy, it feels drafty in here. But it's like, whoa, I mean, you couldn't have made it more obvious if they used a pair of scissors. But yeah, I mean, really, I don't know. And of course, stuff like that has the tendency to make you look nuts. First of all, who in the hell is going to go after your underwear? And second of all, who's gonna start cutting tiny little holes and stuff, or moving things around in the targeted individual's dwelling? I mean, it all follows the same theme. Like I said earlier, these things are theme based. Moving stuff around in your apartment, switching stuff around. I had some really stupid stuff to where, I mean, I know you guys believe me, but I wouldn't even have dared to tell anybody. It follows that theme. I mean, some of the stuff you wouldn't even dare to say what's happening, because it's illogical. It's unorthodox. It's like some of the street theater and the directed conversations that targets deal with. It's like, did I hear you say that? No, no, you're hallucinating. Okay, okay, whatever. And you learn not to react. But I had one time, I bought a bunch of pens. You go to the dollar store, and I used to work at a pizza place, and of course, everybody was always fighting over the pens. You got a pen? You'd work on the the drive-through window or whatever, and people are coming through. They've got to sign the receipt and so on and so forth. And it was always a big deal for somebody to borrow you a pen. So I went and I bought a bunch of packages, these pens and everything, and I think they were red pens. But anyway, I had work uniforms and stuff, and of course you just clip them over your shirt, right? So I still had some of them in the building, right? I threw another pack, because I bought two of them. I threw the other pack in my car, right? And so I go on this delivery, and I was like, where the hell I'll open that other pack, or I think it was already open. I'll just grab another pen. When you get to the dollar store pens, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. So anyway, I went to look back there, and they were black. Okay. And I'm like, I know that they were red. Okay. This is ridiculous, right? But the thing is the other ones were still clipped to my uniforms inside and everything else. And it was just like, really? You changed the damn color of the pens. I mean, and that's when you get into gaslighting somebody, nothing is too insignificant. Nothing is too insignificant, whether you're dealing with somebody tampering with your belongings and moving them around, or, the mutilating your underwear, or, switching something around. It's ridiculous. Some of it's comical. I wish that's all that targets were dealing with. But unfortunately, they're dealing with some pretty serious stuff. Those are the things that we can all laugh about, I guess, depending on, how much you want to spend on clothes. They can be pretty expensive. I learned to go to the near new shops and stuff like that, but it is what it is. But the serious stuff that targets are dealing with, that's really, what gets your attention. That really produces the tyranny. And it's so when people are breaking in and doing stuff like that, like I said, that guy up in Canada, I said, but you're not scared of, they haven't done anything to your food or anything like that? No, they haven't done anything like that. And they wouldn't do that. It's just, there's, I guess for some reason it's more civilized up there in Canada, but that's not what I've experienced. And, I've talked about that before. When targets are attacked, especially if you're a new target individual, my heart goes out to you, by the way. It's going to be intense to get your attention, right? You have to be traumatized. They have to get in your psyche, and that's how they do it. But some people will react pretty severely to the surveillance or the directed conversations with personal information, right? And I've talked about that before. There are different stages to this, but they will ramp it up. For example, you get into stage one, you might hear some personal info with some street theater, some facial expressions, subtle innuendos, coincidences, some silent techniques, maybe some real low-level surveillance. If that doesn't get your attention, of course, they'll move it up to level 2. And that would involve some pretty obvious street theater, some deep directed conversations involving very personal information, and it might even move into the area where you start getting threatened. And it's usually combined with all the themes that we've been talking about. And that's pretty serious. Okay. When somebody starts breaking into your house and then you get directed conversations about poisoning people and giving someone cancer or something, I dealt with a lot of that stuff. Okay. And of course, the target individual is going to experience things. I had a guy who did that, and I thought he was just nuts. I thought, well, this poor idiot, he's talking about all these things you could do to the food, look, you can put this and that and do this to the other thing, and you can give somebody cancer, and 10 years later they'll die and nobody will ever know, and it's a covert way to kill somebody, and you can drive them crazy like this, or blah, 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 blah. And I thought, well, he's obviously trying to mess with my brain. He just wanted to look at my fridge. And I'm like, but the poor little chap, he has no idea that if he goes too far, I'm going to snap his neck. I used to lift weights, and I was into martial arts, and I started wrestling when I was 5. And I'm like, not even scared of these people at that point. And of course, it progressed and it moved a little bit further down the road. And the guy shows up one day, and of course, I was being a smart ass, and I grabbed some stuff out of the fridge, took a big swig, and smiled at him. And he said under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear, and some of the other people that were over there, I actually used to have friends. Well, when they start coming in and doing things to you at night, then you're going to pay attention. And I said, what? Did you just say that? Oh, no, that's time for me to go. And so the people were like, what? Who's that guy? But he was gone. And I thought, well, whatever. But weeks later, it happened that way. And I wake up and my clothes are off and I'm drugged and people are walking out of my house and slamming the door. And of course it did. It got my attention. But later, that individual admitted to me, because I was thinking about taking matters into my own hands. We'll just put it that way. Okay. He'd gone too far. The guy followed me. I moved, and like all targeted individuals, you think that if you change your geographical location at first or just wait it out, these people are going to stop, but they don't. Okay. And so anyway, he admitted, he's, oh, that stuff it's not going to give you cancer. It was just Epicac and blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, really? So a lot of these things involve messing with your head in a way to get you to believe something that's not necessarily true, to make you look crazy, discredit you, and push you over the edge and get you into that place where they can accuse you or do whatever they're going to do. But not all the time. And you don't know. And if that doesn't work, right, and that stage 2 where you're going to be dealing with that kind of thing, combined with themes of poisoning, covert drugging, vandalism, character assassination, all the rumors, so on, being accused of going crazy, dealing with that accusation gaslighting, right? And maybe even threatened with violence, hateful, violent street theater, intense and obvious surveillance. If that doesn't work, then of course, they will start coming in and doing stuff. And I've heard a lot of targets talk about that. The break-ins will involve different types of assault, maybe even sexual assault, drugging, the targeted individual, tampering with things, killing pets, so on and so forth. Very, very serious activity. And they will do that, and they will move through that stage. And of course, the effects can move from paranoia to extreme paranoia. And then, of course, you're so triggered and sensitized to everything. And now, the level of vigilance, hypervigilance that is activated in the target, it'll move you into a place where you're experiencing irrational paranoia. And but really, I mean, if it's real, it's not irrational, right? But that goes back into the themes, of course. Like I said, who's going to believe you, right? What did they do? Well, they broke into my house and they turned off my freezer and they thawed out all my fish sticks. Really? Well, you still got your tartar sauce. Have a good night. I dare you to call the police for something like that. But of course, it moves into an area of seriousness, and it incrementally moves up. And of course, it is an incremental attack, and it moves together in a menagerie. And for rational people, and I feel sorry for people who, maybe they call the police or try to tell someone about this stuff or whatever. And, they're just trying to be honest. And of course, with the theme that everybody's watching and everybody knows and all that, sometimes the target will just get to the point where they believe the cop knows. Well, of course you guys know what's happening. Everybody knows. You've been watching me on the dark web, right? I mean, you know all about it, and they're like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. But it's sad to see people, move through that process of being discredited, just trying to be honest, trying to gain, some type of assistance for the attacks that they're experiencing, trying to tell people about what is going on and getting thrown into that merry-go-round of questions, okay, which is always what happens to targets. And I've talked about that before, that when you try to explain this to people who are in on it, of course, they're going to use all the techniques on you, and they're going to get you into that place where you're triggered and you're emotional and you're angry and you're frustrated and you're hopeless and so on and so forth. But if people don't know about it, it's just one question after another, or you start getting probed by people, you know, and you can tell they're fishing. They're like, well, oh no, I believe you. I'm not trying to, find out if you're really crazy, but when did you start hearing voices? You know, uh, or whatever the target is talking about. That's a bad one. I've talked about that before. If you're experiencing V2K or demonic voices, you might want to keep that one a secret. That's a real powerful technique that is used to discredit targeted individuals. I've been talking for quite a while here. I'm gonna go ahead and see what's going on in the comments. Okay, Bora Bora says that she knows a few people in Canada, and she agrees that it does seem a little safer up there. Okay, well, I'm not the only one, and well, you can't argue with the facts. Like I said, when you just look at the mass shootings, they got plenty of guns up there in Canada. Okay, plenty of guns up there. I don't know, whatever. Okay, gang stalking must end. Welcome to the live stream. They steal stuff and bring it back and do weird stuff with my Bluetooth earbud. Ooh, oh yeah. My gosh. Okay. Bora Bora. Someone stole everything out of my lingerie drawer recently, but nothing was taken from anywhere else. Ooh. So if you say something, of course, now you've got this weird thing that you think everybody wants to, have some type of sexual thing going on there. So it just moves into the place where they can accuse you, But that follows the themes that targets will deal with, right? Underwear or people just moving things around. If you call the police, there's no vandalism. Nothing was stolen, right? They didn't bust down the door. So why are they doing it? Well, I'm a targeted individual, you see. People are in this collusion. I'm the victim of a interstellar conspiracy. And they've all gotten together. Well, who are they? Well, I know they're I don't know. I don't know who they are. Oh, you don't know who they are. Oh, okay. And then the individual starts talking about the government programs and the Freemasons and the witches and the warlocks. And it just adds up to something that is unbelievable. It just adds up to something that is better left unsaid. We'll go back into the comments real quick here. Okay. Jose says, yes, a cop told me they were to shoot me between the eyes. Informant physically assaulted me. Wow. That's hot and heavy there. Okay, Chris said something interesting here. There was times I woke up with blood next to me and small holes in my arms and legs. Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah. That's I've heard a lot of that. I've experienced some pretty weird stuff like that. I've even woke up before in the middle of the whole thing and caught them injecting me with who knows what. But really, really weird. And it makes you wonder if that was planned or not. You don't know. But of course, you're on something and you're just waking up. And by the time, you figure what's going on, they see they're out of the house. They're wearing gloves and all that. So what are you going to do? You're going to call the police? And then the chemicals that they shoot you up with, your memory is messed up, and sometimes for a long time, and of course, usually targets, are attacked in a way and discredited in a way where it just wouldn't pay. Nobody's going to believe you anyway. I used to have long hair. I used to be into, the weightlifting and playing guitar and all that stuff. And by the time all these things happened to me, I ended up, I'm not even going to go into that, I guess, but I will just say I had some serious health issues, and I was accused of shooting up and stuff like that and having hepatitis. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, you can give me a blood test. I've never even done that before. I'm not criticizing anybody out there who has that problem. I'm just saying that I've never done it, but I was accused of all those things, liver failure and a bunch of other stuff. And, No, no, who knows? And who knows exactly what the stuff was that they were putting in the food. I'm trying to make anybody paranoid, but that's the way it is. And, you have that. I hear a lot of people talking about stuff like that. Even some of the things that might be considered spiritual, where people have scratches on them. And sometimes they don't even feel that stuff until they get into the shower. And it's usually three scratches, like three claws on them. I've had it happen to me, right around the groin area and other places. Even on my back one time, and it wasn't the little stuff. It was like deep scratches, man. Just scary looking. A place where I couldn't have even reached. So it's not. It wouldn't even have been possible for me to do that accidentally in my sleep. I've heard a lot of weird stuff like that before. The target will do that. Wake up with the things that Chris was talking about or whatever. I've had that weird stuff, and you don't know. You don't know what's going on. The only thing you know is that your world has been turned upside down. You're living under the tyranny of this activity. You're in the twilight zone, right? You're in the targeted twilight zone. Let's see here. Okay. Burger Boy, welcome to the live stream. Okay. Yeah. Not a problem. Yeah, I was thinking, Burger Boy, but I don't have the computer skills that you do. I'm envious of that. But anyway, yeah, if I was to ever to get together with someone that like that, I guess the two of us combined would probably be able to make a pretty good presentation. But anyway, let's see here. What do we have here? Isn't that lovely, Doc? Yes. Yes. Okay. I'm looking for a comment. Okay. All righty. Well, it looks like the comments have ceased a little bit for the meantime. We'll just go back into this tyranny that targeted individuals are dealing with. Isolation, paranoia. It's a type of covert murder, slander, stonewall. Targets are blackballed in their community, and the sensitization that they're dealing with just it deals with a type of exponential association that it's like yeast that invades their mind. The paranoia is exponential, and like I said, it's theme-based, and it's a type of mechanism. Objects of significance, targets. It's almost like they're being communicated with in a secret form. A lot of people will talk about that. I think Nicholas Boserman mentioned that there was a coffee cup or something like that was on top of his vehicle, and then of course they might move it into a different area, right? And then it gets creepy when that stuff starts showing up in places that you go randomly and it's there or whatever. And I've talked about that before. When you deal with the spiritual aspect of gang stalking, and you can't deny that, in my opinion, even if you believe that there is, a high level of technology being used against you, it doesn't mean that didn't come from the spiritual dimension. I believe all that stuff does, but when people are dealing with unexplainable phenomena, okay, and I've referenced these things before. A biblical reference would be the story of Paul and Silas in Philippi. I've referenced that several times, where a lot of times people would use the familiar spirit, okay, or a type of, I don't know, necromancy or something like that. But whatever you want to call it, there was a girl that lived in that area that had everybody convinced that she was a type of prophetess, and she made a lot of money for the people that owned her. Slavery was different in those days, and she began to harass the Apostle Paul, and harassed him for 3 days, as a matter of fact. And then he got tired of it and cast this demon out of this woman. And of course, she couldn't tell the future anymore. Okay. She wasn't using the shotgun technique. That stuff is real. I've seen it when you're dealing with the occult. And a lot of target individuals are dealing with witchcraft or whatever. They're dealing with people who are influenced demonically, in my opinion. And some of that stuff involves things that, for example, in the Catholic criteria for exorcism, demonization and infestation and possession and so on and so forth, involves a type of knowledge that could only come from outside of space-time. Okay, it would be something that would come from outside our dimension. For example, I was listening to one exorcist, and of course they do, and I'm not Catholic, by the way. They do a very rigorous interview and assessment, including a psychological evaluation of the people that they do the exorcisms on. Of course, they don't just do it on the spot. They do an investigation. They make them take tests and go through a psychological evaluation and so on and so forth. Then they decide through these different forms of criteria whether the individual is really possessed or dealing with something demonic or just mentally ill. Okay. And there was a particular girl that they were having issues with, and this particular individual said that he had two cats, and he'd never had a problem with them. And one night they just started fighting. They woke up in the middle of the night, and these cats were just tearing each other apart. And they had to separate them, and it was just evil. They had, gaping wounds on them, and there was blood and everything all over the place. And it just freaked him out. Okay. And then he gets a call from one of the people he worked with. Of course, he was a priest, obviously. And the guy said, I've got to show you this in person. This person is obviously possessed. And he's like, well, that's not really how we do this. But he insisted, and he brings this girl over, right? And she immediately looked at him and said, so how'd you like the cat thing last night? And of course, at that point, how is she going to know that? Nobody had known about it besides him and his wife, right? And doing a further interview with this girl, they were, I guess, communicating with an individual that was assessing some of the criteria for the possession, but I think he was somewhere else. He was either in another state or another city. And she said, well, you go ahead and call him up. And the guy says, why? Well, he's walking along a beach right now wearing a blue windbreaker. And he's like, no, that's not possible. Go ahead and call him then. And so this guy calls the guy, and he is. Rather than to take his usual lunch break, he decided to go and walk along this beach. And she even told the guy, what this guy had in his pockets. Okay, now how would you know something like that? And the girl in Philippi, of course, she was doing the same thing. And that's how Paul and Silas ended up in prison. And when targeted individuals are dealing with some of the things they're dealing with, a lot of people will speculate and say, well, that's got to be the supercomputer, right? That's got to be some type of technology that is predicting your behavior through algorithms or whatever. And a lot of targets will deal with that. They will go on the run, or they will deal with something, and people will be waiting for them, or individuals will know or seemingly know things that are running through their mind, and a lot of that is an illusion. But when you deal with higher forms of harassment, of course, targeted individuals, they are getting attacked in those ways, and they are dealing with things that, in my opinion, are spiritual. I'm going to go back into the comments. Okay. Yeah, Jose says he saw that interview. Yeah, I wasn't making that up. I think it was Gallagher, if I remember correctly. And I do believe he's a psychiatrist. Okay. YouTube gang stalkers, burger buns. Yeah. Okay. Well, it is what it is. Burger Boy, he loves the entertainment. And I don't know if he really buys into this whole thing, but you know, if he hasn't experienced gang stalking, it's probably better that he doesn't. And I've told people that many times. If you have never experienced this stuff and you're just coming through here and you're trying to figure out what we are talking about, and it's just like, you guys are nuts, it's probably for the best that you think that, because you don't want to deal with this stuff. You don't want to know the things that targets are dealing with. There's a way that people go crazy. Okay, there's a way that people move into this, I don't know, position of dysfunction where they have the sequelae of mental illness. And it's not that it even makes sense looking at the criteria of psychiatry. It doesn't. And a lot of that is a pseudoscience. There's no tests. There's no blood tests. There's no x-rays. Oh, your brain is misfiring. You're hallucinating. You're imagining these things. No one is doing these things to you. It's all an illusion. Well, I know that's not true, but I do also know that when targets are attacked and they start to experience the effects of this stuff, very scientific methodology, they are moved into a place where they do start to go crazy. Well, they start to become dysfunctional. We'll use that word. Crazy is a relative term, because if it's real, it's not crazy. Okay. Let's see here. Psychologists are calling it the Truman Show syndrome. Interesting. I didn't know that. So they've got a name for it now. Really, that's interesting. Well, it was just a matter of time before they cashed in on this stuff. Gang stalking will be a legitimate mental illness pretty soon, and yeah, you'd probably be able to get disability for it. Not that that would really be a big deal, since it's not a whole lot of money to live on. But I call it the Truman effect myself. And for people who've been watching me for a long time, you'll know that that's true. No pun intended, because I made videos about it. In fact, I've got a video out there called The Truman Effect, I do believe. Nothing else, Burger Boy's probably got it on his library menagerie. You should erase that stuff, Burger Boy. I got rid of it for a reason. Don't mess with me. Okay, let's see here. Yeah. Yeah, Jose said Dr. Phil interviewed a targeted individual, but only to discredit him. Well, of course, you know. And that's and I'm not saying that Phil knows what's going on and he's some kind of complicit, I don't know, perp or something like that. I mean, he's just being rational. He's never seen that kind of thing. Chances are he never will. Okay, but I did. I watched that. I was very disappointed in that, because they were bullying the guy. Really, I mean, they were making fun of him and everything. And the guy was just telling the truth. I think he had mentioned that he had found a bunch of wires and stuff like that up in his attic. And to that individual, which I believe him completely, 100%. He was the victim of absolute 100% stalking and harassment. And there was probably some kind of a camera system or some type of surveillance system that he eventually found. And I've talked about that before. There's different ways that this can happen. And it's not to say that they even necessarily need that kind of thing, because like I've mentioned, there's demonic stuff going on, right? But now in today's modern world with technology the way it is, a lot of times targets will be dealing with that stuff. Okay, and it happens. And I was very disappointed by that, though, because it was almost as if the guys targeting moved in to that show. It made me wonder. how many people in the audience that were just, I mean, because if this guy was really crazy, and I've said that before, if people are hostile, if they are, accusing you or being angry with you and saying you're crazy and you need to get treatment or whatever, well, is that consistent? Is it? Is that something that's even believable at that point? For the guy that was on, the Dr. Phil show, they were laughing at him and making fun of him and cheering and clapping when sarcastic remarks were being made, similar to what happened to Myron May when the guy, I'm not going to mention his name, the psychiatrist, did the evaluation on his scenario, the critique, and made fun of one of the scenarios that Myron was talking about, that he was in his bathroom and I think he was taking a bath or taking a shower or something like that, and he heard a voice say that he never puts lotion on or something like that, right? And so the whole joke was that it must be the makers of Johnson and Johnson. It was a conspiracy of hygiene products and personal care to go after him or say, but they will do that. What's the insinuation of someone when a target gets attacked in that way? What's the effect that comes out of that? Well, people are watching you all the time, right? It's part of the mechanism, right? If people are getting directed conversations or innuendos or whatever, and it involves personal information, things that are happening in your house, what's that going to do? It's going to be exponential. It's going to put you into a state of self-scrutiny. Eventually, you're going to be attacking yourself. You're going to be paranoid. You're going to drive yourself nuts. You're going to form that proposition in your mind that people are watching you all the time. There's cameras everywhere. There's nowhere that is safe, nowhere that is private. And it's exhausting. It's demoralizing for the target. Okay? It just, when people do that, when they start becoming hostile, don't believe it. Okay, at that point, that's just as much gang stalking as anything else. If nothing else, people are being hypocritical and venting on you, and I've noticed that before. People will do that. It's not necessarily that they are on the gang stalking, but they're certainly venting on someone that, because if someone's mentally ill, if they really believe that, they would at least be sympathetic. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. Steve Wells, welcome to the live stream. Okay. Steve the Pigeon, I've got video evidence of my perp neighbor going up and down my street trying to make me out to be a pedophile. And she shouted and me, I need to take spastic medication. Okay, I got it. So you were getting accusations. Yeah, that's stalking. And obviously there's no evidence to back some of that up. It's like I said before, that follows the exact theme that Jose was getting attacked with. Okay, and several other people. Nicholas Boserman talked about that. Somebody that was friends with his dad. I can't remember exactly what happened on that scenario right now. Sorry about that if you're watching this later, Nicholas, or in the live stream. But walked up to him and shook his hand. First time he ever talked to him, or at least that day, and said, "You're going to be a chomo," or something like that. I mean, who says something like that? And then, of course, if you say something as a target, an individual being attacked with that, then what does that do? That, along with all the other stuff, it's not even necessarily that it makes you look crazy. It makes you look like you have some kind of guilty conscience or something. I've seen that before, when targets will try to get help, and they will just be accused on several different levels. Well, okay, well, so why do you think all these people are after you? Why do you believe that you deserve to be stalked and harassed? Right? So now it's some type of psychological condition that the targeted individual has, that they are literally manifesting in their life because they have a guilty conscience, because they've done something. It just never ends. There's really no way you can win. It's ridiculous. Alexander Palmer evidently has dealt with that as well. Okay. Yeah. I've heard that many, 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 many times. Okay. Okay, well, let's see here. I'm looking for another comment. Bora Bora says she is a recovering Catholic. Well, I'm glad to see that you are progressing spiritually and growing. I'm glad to see that. There are a lot of, I don't know, I guess, different hermeneutics out there that, well, they're problematic. I'm not going to go into that right now. Okay, I've heard of a lot of people getting attacked in church as well. There's no place that is safe, and of course, as far as the spiritual activity, of course, the kingdom of darkness has agents in those places. Okay, in fact, when you think about it, technically, uh, you know, unless someone is a born again Christian and walking very closely to the Lord, they're going to deal with that. And some people, they're being left alone. There are a lot of people out there that you would consider normal or whatever, because a lot of people will have this false idea that if there's demonic influences or spiritual influences that are malevolent and involved in someone's life, that they've got to be a raving lunatic, a drug addict, a pervert, or something else. Now, that can happen, but it's not to say that that's necessarily the normal atmosphere around someone like that. A lot of times, not like that. Because remember, they have to obfuscate the truth. They have to make it look realistic as far as the delusion that there is no such thing, right? And I've talked about that over here in the West. You have psychiatry and all those other things to obfuscate the spiritual activity. When you move over to a third world country or a place where they have that still, and they don't have deliverance ministries, they don't have churches on every corner. There's not a huge infiltration of the gospel of Christ. There's not a whole lot of scientific technology or advancement in those areas. And you're going to see that kind of stuff more often, but it's hidden here. And the menagerie is created to obfuscate that reality. And there's a lot of people out there that, and I've heard this in ministries and stuff like that, that all of a sudden they'll just manifest. I've seen that. I'm sure a lot of targeted individuals have experienced that, where they're hanging out with someone and all of a sudden they'll just flip on you. People that you might even know for a long time, or maybe even people in your family. Well, that stuff is spiritual. A lot of people will process it as some type of supercomputer with DNA resonance frequency. I don't. Whether they've got that, I don't know. But the point is I know that there's spiritual stuff going on. And just because the Hollywood version of individuals influenced that way involves the type of the depiction of the Exorcist movie or Damien from Omen, the Omen movies or whatever it would say. That's not really how it is. Okay. Sometimes it is very subtle. It's very secret, and even the Bible says that Satan's ministers masquerade as ministers of light, right? Of righteousness, and it can be very subtle. It can be very secret, which makes the menagerie that the targeted individual, being thrown into very, very difficult to deal with. Because, like I've said so many times before, it's your word against everyone else's. Let's take a look at the comments again. Angels don't fall. Welcome to the live stream. They love to lay racism on people who aren't racist. All while being racist towards you. And it's very contradictive. And of course, that's the new religion. And that comes a lot of the Marxist strategy to segregate, to separate people and turn them against each other, to create different social classes. It's Marxist theology 101. And you had guys like Saul Alinsky. He was involved in that, pushing people towards radical protests separating people by social class and race and so on and so forth, and tearing apart the unity, a slow infiltration and breakdown of society. Yeah, that guy actually dedicated his book to Satan that he wrote. Saul Alinsky, that guy. Before him, of course, was Antonio Gramsci, the Fabian Socialists. Yeah, it's everywhere. Everybody's dealing with that now. Okay. Jeremy M says, I've told my coworkers that they are bad actors. That's funny. They're playing dumb. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it sounds like Jeremy is dealing with the workplace harassment. Well, of course, that's the way to do it. Right? We don't know what you're talking. We're not talking about you. Well, I didn't mean to, I didn't mean to knock that soda over on all that stuff you're working on your desk. That was an accident. There's a lot of invasion type of attack methodology that targets deal with. Space invasion is very popular. When you're dealing with coworkers, when you're dealing with all that other stuff, it's really a type of invasion. All the stuff you're going to be dealing with in gang stalking is an invasion. A lot of targets will wear earphones or whatever, just so they can escape all that stuff. And of course, you get used to it after a while. I don't even care. I think it's funny. I'm entertained by it now. It doesn't bother me. And I've talked about that many times. If you're getting obvious harassment, keep a mental note of it. I know it sucks. I know it's frustrating. I know that it can be unpleasant. But at the same time, it cancels out the gaslighting. This stuff can go on for a long time. And it is designed in a way where, a lot of times the target will be moved into a place where they are reading into things and they are questioning their perception of reality, because it is a reality flip. Yeah. It can be a bonus. Yeah. Jeremy says, I'm actually having fun with it. It's hilarious. He loves it. Yeah, well, you got to. And the thing is, and I'm assuming that you're being honest. Of course, I have no reason to doubt you. If that's true, what I'm saying is they're going to stop. Because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If something doesn't bother you, they're going to have to switch it up. I've mentioned that you want to make them work as hard as possible. They want a reaction. They want you to be worried. They want you to be paranoid. They want you to be marinating in all these negative emotions, speculating about all these negative things that are going to happen. But of course, God can work these things out. That's the best part about it. And they're breaking all the rules. But when you don't react, it does cause them to become very aggressive and very frustrated. And I would imagine Jeremy knows that, because I've experienced it. And if you go long enough and you act professional enough, you can actually earn the respect of some of these people. Some of them are unreasonable. I've talked about that. You've got to consider the source of the mental midgets that you are dealing with. Really, look at all the other things they could be doing with their time and God-given resources, but they have chosen to be this way. It's sad and very, very pathetic. Okay. Steve the Pigeon, a lot of their tactics are done in a way so that it's deliberate, as they want you to know they are doing it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's always surrounded by that plausible deniability. They want you to see it. That's one of the biggest problems with confronting gang stalkers, right? Trying to get one in. They don't care. They don't care. And it's like the targeted individual that expects logic and justice and reasonability. There isn't any. Right? Why would you do something like that? Because you're a targeted individual and I can get away with it. Right? That's kind of what you're going to get back. And they're going to get away with it for now. Later, well, that's going to be different. And that's very important to remember, guys, because, you know, the terrain, the salient landscape around the target individual can be very oppressive. And if you forget that the God is going to eventually take care of all these things, it can be, well, hard to deal with. And they want that. They want the sense of injustice to build up. They want the targeted individual to be provoked, to be moved into a place of emotional dysregulation, and a place where they can be manipulated, right? But you got to turn that around. And you do that by the same thing Jeremy was talking about. You just turn it into an activity. It's a game, right? You're not seeing any of it. You're not noticing any of it, right? It's kind of it's a reversal. It's the best tactic out there. Sons of Thunder says, my gang stalkers have actually approached me and said they believe life should be hell. I said, okay, I'm going to make it real for you. Well, yeah, just be careful what you wish for. You know, you're the one that said it, right? You're the one that opened your big mouth. Have fun with that. It's coming to a theater near you. Yeah. It's going to be one of those prayers that gets answered. Unfortunately, they are so stupid, aren't they? They are. Okay. Yeah, Angela, welcome to the live stream. My gang stalking has been going on for 10 years, at least. Well, my hat's off to you, and I've talked about that before. Making it through just the first couple of years is hard. You make it out past 5 years, you're a straight up warrior. Anything beyond that, you should be given a medal, a break on taxes, and one of Elon Musk's electric cars. You know, I mean, this stuff is rough. Absolutely. My hat's off to you. And keep going, honey. You're tough. You can do it. With the help of God, all things are possible. Okay, well, guys, unfortunately, I'm going to have to end the live stream. It's been real. Just to go over the theme, the tyranny of gang stalking. It is so oppressive. It is so reckless. It is covert murder. And it comes from all angles. And it is literally meant to drive you crazy. It is a way to torture someone while you're killing them. Okay. It's very tyrannical. And, like I've said many times, considering the source of this, while so many normal and pleasant productive options exist, these individuals have chosen to engage in this behavior. And eventually, as we just talked about, well, it's going to come back on them. Okay. And the hell that they are giving you will probably be returned to them many-fold, many times over. I'd like to thank all of you for participating. I'd like to thank everyone who helps support me in the channel. God bless. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.